How far open should you keep your hats when you're playing open hat time during a song? We'll see if we can find a sweet spot, and we'll use two very different pairs of hi-hats to test this. I'll teach you an exercise that you can use to build better left foot stability and control, and I'll show you why you should not adjust your hats by default to that sweet spot. Let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the Non-Glamorous Drummer, where we're all about learning the most important core drumming skills that help you make music on the drums faster. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. Hey, before we go any further, I want to make you aware there's a really cool, totally free resource I've created for you. It's brand new, and it's an ebook all about the secret to playing better one-handed hi-hat 16th. So check it out, totally free to you, in the description below. Go download that after you watch today's video. So you could definitely hear there right at the end where I kept the hats at the same distance apart. Playing quietly, it sounded kind of weird and clingy, but then when it got louder, it worked. So it's obvious that if we're playing louder, we can get by with a more open hat setting, and that's because if we're hitting harder, we can move the cymbals more, and so they don't have to be as close together to actually make contact with each other and really interact and create that open hat sound. So if we're playing quietly, we might barely have to open them to get a nice open sound for whatever we're playing, but if we're playing loudly, we might want to open them a little bit further, but it just depends on the sound we want and how washy and open we want it to be. I think what's interesting is that with the A's, because they're a little bit heavier and a little bit thicker, they get more clingy sounding more quickly than the K's do. So I think the sweet spot for the A's is actually a little bit tighter than with the K's. With the K's, you can get by with them being a little more open just because they're lighter cymbals, and so they create that sizzly kind of nice open hi-hat sound more easily than the A's, which are a little bit harder to move, and so I think you have to hit them a little bit harder. There's so many variables here, and if you're playing really heavily, like you're playing hard rock stuff, the A's might be your better cymbal if your tendency is to hit really hard. For me, I like to go a little bit lighter, and that's why I like my K so much, so it definitely depends. Now, this whole discussion is kind of meaningless or even worthless to you if you feel like you don't have enough control over your left foot to really maintain that sweet spot. It's one thing to say, okay, here's a sweet spot, do this. But if you can't get your foot to stay right there at that spot the whole time you're playing, then this is all no good. And of course, you could go into as many different increments of that as you want to, and it obviously gets harder and harder the more precise you get with that. But the whole point here is just to be conscious of how hard your foot's pressing. If you're playing tight open notes, lift up your heel, press in with your big toe. As you gradually loosen, lower your heel down so you can put less foot pressure there at the end of the foot plate, and then gradually, with your heel down, begin lifting things up. You may prefer to do a slightly different foot technique than me, but that's just what I recommend. Using your big toe to press in if you're playing tight, then gradually lowering your heel, lifting up your foot a little bit as you go looser. That's a great way to control it really well. So you've got really good precise control as you go. So you've got your heel planted and you can just control that angle of your foot. Now, I mentioned back at the beginning that it's really important to not just adjust your hi-hats by default to that sweet spot. If we decided, okay, here's the sweet spot, because I know it might make sense to say, okay, let's go ahead and have our sweet spot right here. That way we could take our foot off, we could play double bass or whatever and leave the hats open. But the problem with that is if we want to play like chicks or splashes, it barely works. Barely works. We got to have more room to work if we're going to open ourselves up to the possibility of playing other foot sounds, or if we want to play like big open notes where we're going like, that kind of works, but they weren't very big, and we can make a bigger deal out of those notes if we're able to open things up a little more. Much better sounding chicks. Much better sounding splashes. And the open notes sound way cooler. So give yourself some more space, and even though the sweet spot for playing open notes might be right here, you've got to learn to control that with your foot and adjust your hat so that you've got room to work, so that as you work on other things in your playing, as you develop your hi-hat playing, you'll be able to get all the sounds you need to and be as versatile as you can. It's all about versatility, musicality here. Hey, since we're talking all about the hi-hats today, go check out the brand new, completely free ebook in the description below that teaches you the tried and true method to really mastering one-handed hi-hat 16ths. We talk about the Moeller two-stroke technique and how you can get two notes for the price of one, and we talk about exactly where to place your stick on the cymbals to really get smooth fluidity in your notes. This is really the secret behind how Jeff Porcaro achieved such a smooth hi-hat sound in Rosanna. So we talk all about that. There's lots of pictures and diagrams and links to further resources. This method is powerful, and if you spend 15 minutes a day working this stuff, you're gonna see massive results in your hi-hat playing. So go check it out, download it today. It is yours completely free. Have fun.